Nick Nurse and the Raptors organization has been catching some heat for potentially doing Thaddeus Young dirty, as he received a bunch of DNPs to close out the year, and that led him not to achieve some of the incentives in his contract. So we'll discuss that, as well as the Raptors getting a win to close out the season against the Milwaukee Bucks, OG Anunoby making some history, and the Toronto Raptors a potential trade target for them this offseason. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump on the first topic of discussion. First thing we're taking a look at is Nick Nurse doing Raptors veteran dirty. As I mentioned in the opening, Thaddeus Young, a guy that was in our rotation at the start of the year when we acquired him at last year's trade deadline. He was expected to be a legitimate piece for this Raptors squad to make a little push for the playoffs, to play in, all that sort of stuff. And weirdly, some people will say weirdly, some people will say, oh, he wasn't playing well enough. But Thaddeus Young, who was a part, maybe not a heavy minute getter, not a guy getting a bunch of run for this Raptors team earlier in the season, was getting a lot of DNPs to close out the year. Not even garbage time was Thaddeus Young getting out there on the court, stepping foot. He was staying in his warm-up, staying in the pants, all that sort of stuff. And while that's a surprise to some people, Josh Lewinberg gave some context as to why Thaddeus Young may have not have gotten that extra bit of run to close out last season, or this season, as he basically said Nick Nurse, he was asked about the DMP with coaching decisions for the team's final 14 games, and Nick Nurse basically responded saying it's tough not to play him. He's a super class person, a super pro, and really got a lot of time for him, regarding to his just personality, him off the court and all that sort of stuff. Not time on the court, because he did finish the season with 14 straight DNPs. But you always want guys to play more, and that's one of the hardest parts of the job. So when he was questioned about, why Thad wasn't getting it, deflected the answer and just said it's tough to really do, especially with a class guy like Thaddeus Young. And then Lewinberg went on to give some context, essentially saying that Young has several incentives in his contract. Most of them are unlikely, but all of which are contingent on him playing at least 60 games. And he played 54 before the 14 straight DNPs to close the season, and only $1 million of his $8 million for next season is guaranteed if he's waived before June 30th. So we don't have the full details as to what Thaddeus' contract is, but the fact that there's that 60 game sort of mark off, it would have been a bad look for them to play him the 59 and then sort of cut him off there. And you look at the game, even the close of the season, right? Thaddeus Young, it seemed like everyone on the Raptors that was eligible to play, got some opportunities out there. While Thaddeus Young was again a coach's decision, even behind guys like Ron Harper Jr., Wieskamp and stuff that never see the floor either. And it's a bad look, regardless of if your opinion. I mean, Thaddeus Young hasn't been killing it by any means this season. You look at his stats on the year, they aren't that miraculous. I mean, 4.4 points per game, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, and the ugly 17% from behind the three-point line. It's nothing crazy, but he is a guy that plays really solid defense. He brings effort out there. He facilitates. He's just a solid glue guy. And on those nights, especially closing out the season where we occasionally saw Pascal Siakam, some of our top guys, it's been better since the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl, but we've had a lot of nights, even when Thaddeus Young, was getting DNPs and stuff, where Pascal Siakam is still playing that upwards of 40 minutes. And we'll talk about the records that were set by OG Anunoby this season. Pascal, once again, is the league leader in terms of minutes for this year for back-to-back seasons. So Thaddeus Young definitely could have been thrown in terms of those opportunities. And if the Raptors weren't sort of looking to not give him some of the incentives in his contracts, I mean, like games like this, right, where every single person on the court plays. Thaddeus Young is playing for a contract next season. I think he's a guy that's still an NBA player. I know you want to give young players opportunity and all that sort of stuff, but Thaddeus Young is also fighting to, for another team to potentially sign him next year. I'm sure the Raptors won't, just given how they kind of did him dirty at the start of the season, but I don't know. I think it's just a bad look on the organization. Not even play him in those DNP minutes. I know it's a business move. I know it's all this, but you can't be doing that to veterans like Thaddeus Young, who have been around the league, have those types of relationships, and you traded for, right? You brought him in from the San Antonio Spurs, and he hasn't been bad. He hasn't been complaining. He hasn't been making up, making comments in the media, bashing the team, bashing the organization, or anything on that front. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of an ugly look, but let me know what you guys think about the Raptors potentially doing Thaddeus Young dirty, right? The stats don't indicate he's that deserving a lot of minutes, but definitely a guy I don't think should be bench DMP below Ron Harper Jr. or something like that. But that leads us into our next topic of discussion, the Raptors versus Bucks reaction. And the Raptors did have a game to close out this season. Not that exciting. We rested OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam. The Bucks didn't have many of their guys, but we did get to see some of the bench players get some opportunities. Malachi Flynn started. He had a big game in the starting unit, had 20 points. Right, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes didn't really have that much of that many things to do. Precious Achiuwa had 14 points. Right, Gary Trent Jr. was nice to see him be in a rhythm. Right, knock down a few threes, have 27 minutes, 23 points. 7 of 13 shooting. Right, we need Gary Trent Jr. to be rolling for these playing games that are happening this week. So it's nice for him to get some shots up, get some buckets rolling. But some of the deep bench guys who Delano Banton in the second last game of the season had a hot 4 minutes to close out that game. Was good in this game. Wasn't anything overwhelmingly, insane. Didn't blow anyone away in terms of his productivity out there on the court. Right, Wieskamp missed his threes, went 0-5 from the three-point line, and this is really his opportunity to get his game going, right, to make a name for himself in the future. Right? I talked about Thaddeus Young trying to find a role, find a team next season. Right, Wieskamp, he's going to need to be able to knock down his threes, missed some open ones, right, some open corner threes, just in and out. Not a good look there for a guy that's supposed to be a three-point sniper, right? Ron Harper Jr., I kind of roasted him, saying that, not roasted, but saying that Thaddeus Young deserves some minutes over him to close out the year. He actually looked pretty solid, right? Missed 2 threes, made 1, had 10 points, used his size, used his strength to drive out there in the lane. It's hard to take a lot of takeaways from this one. Koloko looked good in his little bit of minutes. Will Barton also had knocked down 2 or 3 of his threes. The one thing that worries me about that is that Nick Nurse is going to give him ample opportunity in that playing game after him having a hot game against the Bucks. Maybe he'll be able to win us one or something like that, but I don't know. Will Barton hasn't been that consistent over the course of this season, but I think the guy that it's really interesting. It's been the topic of discussion regarding our bench this entire year. Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, obviously Jeff Dowden Jr., who's ineligible to be playing now, but after Flynn puts up a game like this to close out the season, could he be the backup point guard over a Will Barton over, I guess Banton? I don't think Banton's going to play in the playing game or something like that, but or probably Nick Nurse. Knowing Nick Nurse will be running a tight leash, having a tight rotation for that game, but I don't know. It's that playing game's going to be wild. I'm excited for it. I'm hoping the Raptors are able to get a dub against the Bulls and make it into the playoffs, but it's going to be tight, and I think without Jeff Dowden, people are underestimating the value of Jeff Dowden. We didn't bring him back in. I'm worried. I don't even know what to think about this Raptors team at this point now, but Scotty had a few dunks in this Bucks game. It's not a lot of takeaways to really take away from, but nice to see the Raptors at least get a win, to close out the year, get some momentum after the 2 ugly losses we had against the Boston Celtics. But Gary Trent Jr. playing well is a good look to see. But next thing we're taking a look at is OG Anunoby making Raptors history. It's pretty cool stuff, right? OG Anunoby is known as a defender, a lockdown guy on ball, and this season really took his on-ball defense to a whole nother level. And usually steals leaders, they're not necessarily the greatest defenders in the world, right? So usually you're gambling a lot if you're on the defensive end. But OG Anunoby is shown to be a guy that is top 20 in all the advanced defensive metrics in terms of on-ball coverage. He's a strong guy. He can guard multiple positions, and he's also leading the NBA in steals, right? He's a steals leader in the NBA, and it's the first time since Marcus Camby the Raptors have had a league leader in terms of one of those box score stats. So love to see that for OG Anunoby. Congratulations to him there. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Pascal Siakam also has back-to-back seasons leading the league in minutes, so that doesn't count as a box score stat. But Raptors setting records left, right, and center. And speaking of just all the coaching drama, Nick Nurse's name has also been thrown out there, and it's not directly in this article, but Shams and Sam Amick basically broke down in an athletic article that the Houston Rockets head coach is out, right? Steven Silas is gone, and Nick Nurse, if he's available, is a name that could likely be going down to Houston. So keep your eye on that as well. But the final thing we're taking a look at, and fits into all the offseason narratives and all the drama on that front, right? Potential Raptors trade target this summer. If the Raptors do go in a rebuilding direction, which I know a lot of people are sort of calling for, a team that we've made trades with in the past, we've had a lot of rumors with in the past, Portland Trailblazers have essentially come out and said, right, At the end of an underwhelming season, the key figures the Blazers say they know are big additions that must be made, and the franchise pillar doesn't want to be in the draft. The Blazers will likely trade their lottery pick unless they land the number 1 overall selection, which would be Victor Wembanyama, which would give them the right to draft, many are calling Generation Star, and Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, so we had a lot of chatter last summer about potentially sending OG Anunoby to the Portland Trail Blazers in return for their lottery pick, which would have been Shaedon Sharpe. Maybe we could do a package that brings back one of those top 10 picks again. I don't know. I know a lot of people are keeping their eyes on this year's draft, how the Toronto Raptors do, and how this playing tournament's all going to play out. So definitely keep your eyes peeled about the Portland Trail Blazers and the Raptors potentially making a deal, given how the close of this season has gone for the Raptors. But I'm sure we'll discuss that a bunch to close out this year. But folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. You guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.